Well, Michael, we don't have a ton of time, so I want to get right into it if you don't mind.
Sure.
So we've asked everyone in very different stations of life what they see in their personal lives as the greatest challenges facing America or the people around them, and maybe some silver lining hope that maybe isn't getting out there that you see.
The greatest challenge facing America is, ultimately probably the tensions that were built into the political order from the beginning. And this would have been no surprise to the founding fathers or to the framers of the Constitution. They would talk about these things. And curiously enough, the great observer of American democracy, Alexis de Tocqueville, pointed this out explicitly in Volume 2 of Democracy in America, which is that he said the religion of America is unstable. Obviously, it was founded by some of my Puritan ancestors on the Mayflower, which is a great cigar company, by the way. Are we cousins? Do you know?
Well, probably. We're all related. I'm not Sicilian at all.
Only on the Mayflower.
Only
This guy's a pro.
So obviously there's the kind of puritanical, separatist, brownist founding, but there are all sorts of religious backgrounds in America. And the country was founded as a Christian country. John Adams says it's built for moral and religious people. He also says the principles of Christianity are the principles on which independence was won. John Jay says the same thing. Thank God that we're given a Christian country, and so on and so forth. But it's unclear what kind of Christianity, there's also a big movement of deism, enlightenment, liberalism was cropping up around that time. And Alexis de Tocqueville said there's this instability here. But over time, America is going to move one of two ways. Either America is going to give up Christianity entirely, or America is going to tend toward the Church of Rome, which would be very shocking for many of our Protestant ancestors here. But if you look around at the religious movements in the country today, I think that is undeniably true. And so it's a great challenge to get all the way down to the religious foundation of the country. But then Cardinal Manning reminds us that all human conflict ultimately is theological. So ultimately it's going to get down to these religious questions.
Yeah, I mean, just to be amazing that the founders, you'd say, here comes America going Papist, and then Europe going Muslim.
We'll come again. They would also have been amazed to see that photograph of Pope Leo on one side of the desk, and then J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, Catholics, on the other side.
Totally blown away.
Yeah, I was going through, if you ever want to have a good time, go through old anti-Catholic propaganda cartoons from the 1800s. They're unbelievable.
And totally vindicated now.
The alligators, the bishops as alligators.
We did. Yeah, total hegemony.
One-tenth as dangerous as Catholics were portrayed in those.
That's right.
You know what I mean? I aspire to that.
I thought, though, Trump promised a new golden age for America, and I thought, all right, he might make good on some of that, on taxes and immigration and business. And first American Pope, we're taking the golden age all the way to the Vatican. This is pretty good.
We're not stopping there. Oh man,
to the moon.
To the moon. To who knows? To a new crusade. Who knows?
Listen, we can talk.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of it, we got the Pope. I mean, American Pope, and then we got America's 250th anniversary next year. I mean, do we see this opportunity, not just to the benefit of the church in the United States, but also America? Like, do we see a resurgence of patriotism possibly with this?
I hope that we will. Speaking of my ancestors, I care a lot about the American Revolution, in part because I had a couple ancestors who fought in it. John and Simon Knowles. John, the father, died of his wounds from Bunker Hill, but Simon fought throughout the war, Bunker Hill, all the way up through crossing the Delaware, Trenton, Yorktown, all the way up to Newburgh. And we know this because of his pension application. And the case of Simon Knowles, I think, is illustrative because we have this history when we look back now on the American Revolution. And the conservative side of things says they were fighting for these ideals of the Declaration of Independence and these eternal whatever. And the liberal side says they were fighting to preserve slavery or whatever the 1619 Project said. Total nonsense. But I actually think there is a problem with both of those analyses. Because I think of my ancestor, Simon Knowles, signs up at 16 or something like that. Was he really signing up because of the principles of John Locke and Montesquieu? No, I don't think he ever read John Locke or Montesquieu.
Representation.
Yeah, was he signing up to preserve slavery? No, they didn't have any slaves. I think that a lot of the patriots of the American Revolution signed up to preserve their way of life and to fight for their countrymen. and their extended countrymen. One might even use the phrase ordo amoris, which has come up recently in the political context.
Be careful, Mike.
I don't know if you're allowed to use that Augustinian phrase anymore.
We're safe space.
Safe space confirmed. Yeah.
We can say ordo amoris.
But I think this is really important because if you look at the historiography of the country, there's a changing conception of what America is. It was different for Governor Bradford and John Winthrop than it was for John Adams and John Jay, and that was different than it was for Ike Eisenhower, and it's different than it is for us today. What is the country? What does it mean to be a patriot? What is the thing that we're preserving? I think that we've just come out of a highly ideological moment on the left and on the right.
Yes.
And I think we're returning to a more profoundly conservative understanding of history, which is that we're not ideological. We're actually anti-ideological. That ideology, to use the phrase of Michael Oakeshott, is the formalized abridgment of the supposed substratum of rational truth contained in the tradition, which is a mouthful, but it really sums it up. Ideology is this shallow, abstracted thing. And that's not what I want to preserve. You know what I love about America? I love some of the ideals that we say that we hold. I also love hot dogs on the 4th of July.
Buc-ee's is pretty sweet too.
I love Buc-ee's. I
Pushing
love
back at this idea that America is just an idea.
That's right. It's a way of life, and it's a people, and it's a place, it's a geography. Exactly. It's a home. And so I really hope and I expect to see that kind of understanding come back up as we celebrate America's 250th, because I'm attached to many ideas, but I don't love ideas the way I love my mother or my father or my wife or my home.
We were talking with Father Mike Schmitz earlier about indifference being one of the great contagions of our time. And it's hard, it's easy as a young person to have all these ideas thrown at you, and you can be indifferent to an idea, but it's harder to be indifferent to your mom, like you said, or to the place where you grew up, your hometown. And I think J.D. Vance coming to this populist idea that America we are a homeland in a place, and there's a great deal of hope in that. I wanted to ask you about the sort of resurgence in religiosity that we're seeing. I mean, obviously there's a polarization, right? Because there's like the rise of the nuns, although that seems to be halting a little bit.
I think that's over.
And then you think, okay, good, all right, that was over. So we have now this rise in religiosity. And I asked Father Mike the same thing about the trend that we're seeing in young men, especially, seeming to come back to the faith, convert to the Catholic faith, especially. And what would you say is driving that? Is it that young men scraped bottom sooner? Is it that somehow the faith is being presented in a more challenging, manly way? Is patriotism on the rise among men because it is just a more masculine thing to be patriotic? What do you think is accounting for this?
Well, I like your suggestion that the young men just scrape the bottom faster.
Because it's tough to be a guy.
Yeah, in part because
someone said it.
The culture says that we're evil and toxic, and the culture hates us, and also because young men have fallen prey to many of the vices of modernity. Sloth, lust, wrath, kind of disconnected from reason. And so we've gotten it a little bit more. And also because men, on the bright side of things, men are attracted to the use of reason. And we want the truth. And so for a while we were told, well, all the smart people are atheists. That was the Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett nonsense. Right. And look, that had a decent run with the backing of the media, probably more a publishing phenomenon than an intellectual movement. But it got me for some years when I was a teenager. And that's over. That's really weak. I was talking to someone recently. I forget if he was a priest or a layperson. It's all kind of blurry. But it said that, 20 years ago, the risk for people who want to evangelize was that people would become atheists, and you want to pull them out. Today, the risk is not that people will become atheists, which is bankrupt now, but that they will fall into the occult, the wishy-washy, new agey crystals, and I'm spiritual but not religious, man. I have to remind people, spiritual but not religious is the definition of a demon. A spiritual creature, but you don't give to God what he deserves. That's the shift that I see, and even when it comes down to a bifurcation among young men, the religiosity, the ortho bros, a huge resurgence in Catholicism, and specifically an attraction to the traditional Latin Mass and the good old time religion. There's also a break on some side among men who are attracted to Nietzsche and to being an Übermensch and this kind of vitalism.
Is that the woke right you're referring
The
to?
woke right. What is the woke right?
What is the woke right?
It's the dumbest
Woke right
You
is-
said order, well, Maurice. I can say
That's
The
woke
woke
right.
right. I know that. That's a
Give you a
bumper
pass.
sticker I think we can send to the dustbin. Because what I love about the term woke right is it can apply to anybody. You're too liberal. You're not sufficiently
What I
liberal.
don't like.
Yeah, well, I mean, the term woke has kind of become that too, because it's like a joke of a meme that it's like no one even knows what it means anymore. It's just used as a slur.
And I find people on the right who lean on the word woke, either to condemn their compatriots or to go after their opponents. They overuse this word woke because they don't want to go so far as to criticize liberalism per se. They say, no, liberalism
It's
is
a
good.
stand-in,
It's the
right?
woke, but it's really liberalism's bad. That's all kind of bad. You know, we got to go back a little further, guys.
So, Michael, I have a question for you. I see you go all over the country, right? And maybe you're facing the problem that she said. You're trying to talk to young men, you're trying to talk to young women in colleges. And I actually observed, I think I watched something from you like 3-4 years ago, and I saw you get pretty fired up, pretty heated, almost at a point yelling. And now I watch you go and you're smiling, you're laughing, you seem
chill,
calmer
man.
almost.
Yeah.
So my question is, was that an intentional change on your point? And how do you approach the art of persuasion or conversation, say maybe differently now than you did? What have you learned?
That's a good point. I haven't really thought about it because I've always been pretty chill. My blood doesn't get up too much. It's a learned skill when you're Italian and Irish. You got to tamp it down a little.
Impressive, very good.
But St. Paul tells us to be all things to all people. So my natural state is not to get angry. I remember when I first entered political media, I was told by a very prominent person that I would have no future because the only ways to glory in the conservative movement were to be angry all the time or to be a comedian. And I'm neither of those things. So I said, well, this is bad news for my show. But
Was it Alex Jones?
It was he's Michael, you'll never have any future here. But sometimes, in maybe 10 years ago, the debates that were getting attention and were reaching people and were persuading people were a little more in your face, a little more hostile. And so, look, I'm happy to participate in the medium that I'm being asked to participate in. But I find today, especially today, as the left has become so absurd and become so lost to its own unreason, I find it's much more persuasive to be a little quiet, keep a smile on your face, laugh through it. The person who loses his temper first loses the debate, usually.
Yeah.
I think we saw that in your appearance on Surrounded. That was fun TV, I have to say. But aside from just entertainment value, it was impressive to see the overwhelming message I got was like, you actually really did care about. I don't know if that's true. Maybe you did.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, right? Like you really cared about the guy sitting across the table or the girl or the He-Man, and you're just. It was beautiful to see that just as an example of like, this is how we should. Because the point of all this, right? The point of what you do and the point of what Matt does and Daily Wire and all that, the point is the salvation of their souls, right? And we want them to be happy. I mean, they're not happy.
Yeah.
They're miserable people. And
I'm glad that came across because I would like to, help these people come over. And you can imagine how they got there because we all have our own sins and we've all made our own intellectual errors and it hasn't led any of us to mutilate ourselves happily, but you can see how they get there. And once you go down a bad road, it's increasingly more difficult to get out because sin darkens the intellect, as we know. Mm-hmm. So I think a way for some conservatives who, they just get so angry at these people and they just want to destroy them with facts and logic and stuff. A way to have a little sympathy for them is to remember that the way we think about freedom today is modern and liberal and wrong. The notion that freedom is just perfect neutrality in choosing.
And license, like
and
there's
license,
no
and
judgment,
it tends toward license.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that's wrong is, one, if that were true, then we would be freer than God because God can't sin. So I don't think we're freer than God. And two, because we know that heroin addicts, I guess they're free on the street, but they're not really free. They're slaves. Mm-hmm. So the sturdier and more classical understanding of freedom is that freedom is not neutrality in choosing, but willing, predicated on knowledge. Mm-hmm. And both of those are very important because what distinguishes our human nature is our intellect and our will. And that's how you can go wrong on your freedom in one of two ways. Either because your will is compromised by vice, like addiction or whatever, or you're ignorant. And so you're not free if you're ignorant. That's why we don't let kids vote yet. Nancy Pelosi wants to lower the voting age to 12 or something, but that's why. And so with these people, if they're just ignorant, most of these people were not educated properly, and virtually no one's educated properly today unless they go to Regina Coeli. And all of these people have fallen into terrible vice because our public order, our political order, encourages a state of perpetual mortal sin for everybody on like 20 different levels. So you say a lot, man, there before the grace of God go I. Here are a few things you could correct, and you will have a better life. You're the one screaming and getting red in the face. It's not me. Which one of us is more likely to be happy?
Yeah. So, Michael, I have to wrap here, unfortunately. I'm really sorry. 2 suggestions, because you're the merch guy. You're the product guy, right? And
we have ideas.
It is almost subconscious. 2 ideas for you.
Yeah.
Weighted loafers.
Weighted loafers to prevent the lightness from taking you up into the realm of the fops and the Nancys. Yes.
Weighted loafers, veils by Knowles.
Veils by Michael's
the
Mantillas.
ladies are demanding
Michael's Mantillas. Now we're talking.
We are
I think we should
demanding veils by
get in the
Knowles.
studio.
That is such a good idea. The
There
weighted
you go.
loafers is
Come
pretty
on
good
now.
too. That's
Okay,
harder to
and whose idea
manufacture.
was
Yeah, that's true.
Veils by Knowles though.
We'll be in touch.
We'll be, I this is going to get litigious
We have-
because I'm going to owe you a
Yeah.
royalty on this. This is good stuff. Brilliant ideas.
It's
Wow.
live
Camera live.
TV. Yeah.
Wow. Love it.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining
Yeah,
us.
thank you for your
It's
time.
marvelous
So nice
to be with you.
Yeah.
See you later on today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you later. Pleasure to meet you, Michael.